I never imagined I'd end up here, counting coins to buy bread, checking my phone every hour for job rejections, and avoiding eye contact with my landlord every time I walked past his door. Just a year ago, I had a stable job at a local design agency. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. Then came the sudden layoff, followed by months of empty promises and canceled interviews. Slowly, everything I'd built began to unravel. My name is Aanya, and for the last 11 months, I've lived rent-free in a crumbling apartment on the second floor of a quiet building in the city's older district. Not because I wanted to cheat the system, but because life had cornered me in a way I never thought possible. Mr. Rakesh, my landlord, was a man in his early 40s, neatly dressed, clean-shaven, with the kind of polite smile that made him hard to read. When I first fell behind on rent, he was surprisingly calm. "Don't worry, Aanya," he said. "Just pay when you can." That was back when I still had hope, when I thought I'd find another job within weeks. Weeks turned into months, and his tone shifted. He never yelled, never made threats, but his knocks became more frequent. His eyes lingered longer. "Still? No job?" he'd ask casually, almost as if he enjoyed watching me squirm. I tried everything. Selling old clothes, tutoring online, even applying to waitress jobs that paid next to nothing. But nothing lasted, and the weight of unpaid rent grew heavier with each sunrise. One evening, I came home to find an envelope tucked under my door. No threats, no legal jargon, just a note in neat handwriting. "Come upstairs tonight. We need to talk." My heart thudded. I stared at the note for hours before finally climbing the stairs. His apartment was well kept, almost too clean. He poured me tea, motioned for me to sit, and spoke like he was discussing the weather. "You've been here nearly a year without paying. I've let it go long enough." I opened my mouth to explain, but he raised his hand gently. "I'm not angry. I just need something in return." His voice was low, deliberate. "One night. With me. That's all. Then we call." It even. The room went still. My ears rang with silence as I stared at him. For a moment, I wondered if I'd misheard. "I know it's unconventional," he added, sipping his tea, "but I think it's fair." Fair. That word rang in my head long after I left. I walked back to my apartment in a daze, every footstep echoing with confusion, fear, and something else I didn't want to name. I didn't sleep that night. Just lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering how far I'd fallen and whether this was the only way out. By dawn, I had made my decision. I would go. The knock on his door echoed like a final verdict. I stood there for a moment, handy, trembling at my side, heart thundering in my chest. Then, slowly, the door opened. Mr. Rakesh smiled. Not warmly, not cruelly, just calmly, like a man who had anticipated this moment for a long time. "Come in," he said softly, stepping aside. His apartment smelled of sandalwood and something sweet, maybe wine. The lights were dim, casting soft shadows across the cream-colored walls. A single candle flickered on the dining table. He gestured for me to sit, and I obeyed without a word. We sat across from each other in silence. 2 cups of tea steamed between us. He wore a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled, as if prepared for something serious, yet intimate. "You don't have to be nervous," he said after a while. "I just want us to be comfortable." I nodded, though my spine felt stiff as stone. My thoughts spun in a loop. This is the price. This is survival. This is my choice. "I used to be married," he said suddenly, as though trying to soften the moment with confession. "Loneliness is a strange thing. It makes you do things you never thought you'd ask for." I didn't respond. I wasn't here to learn about his past. I was here to survive mine. He moved closer. Gently, he took my hand in his. I flinched at first, then stilled myself. His touch wasn't forceful, but it held intent. His fingers traced mine with careful patience, as though testing how far he could go. "I won't hurt you," he whispered. "You're safe here." But I didn't feel safe. I felt like a ghost floating above my own body, watching a stranger in my skin nod her head, letting herself be led. He guided me to the couch, offered me a glass of wine, which I declined. I didn't want to blur this memory. I wanted to remember every second of it so I'd never forget what desperation can make a person accept. The night unfolded slowly. Not violently, not cruelly, but with a heaviness that pressed on my chest like a stone. He kissed me like it meant something. He touched me like we were lovers. And all the while I stared at the ceiling, eyes open, drifting through a fog of numbness. It wasn't about romance. It wasn't even about lust. It was about power. About a man who could make offers disguised as mercy, and a woman who had run out of choices. When dawn broke, I dressed in silence. He was still asleep, his face peaceful in a way that felt unreal. I slipped out the door, each step back to my apartment feeling heavier than the last. Inside, I collapsed onto my bed, not from exhaustion, but from the weight of having traded a part of myself for a roof over my head. I was free, for now. But at what cost? The morning after was eerily quiet. Sunlight streamed through the window like nothing had changed, but I had. I sat on the edge of my bed for what felt like hours, the silence louder than any noise. My body felt foreign, like it belonged to someone else. I kept replaying the night in my mind, hoping to feel something, anger, sorrow, even relief. But all I found was emptiness. I showered twice, scrubbing until my skin turned red, but nothing. Washed away the feeling of being used. I wasn't angry at him, not yet. I was angry at myself for agreeing, for letting my desperation become a bargaining chip. But even that anger dulled beneath a numb acceptance. I had made the choice. What other option did I have? For the next few days, Mr. Rakesh didn't mention anything. He greeted me in passing like nothing had happened, a soft nod, a casual smile. I wanted to believe it was over, that he'd meant what he said about calling it even. I even allowed myself a moment of hope that perhaps now I could focus on getting out. But hope is fragile, and mine was short-lived. A week later, he knocked on my door again. This time there was no pretense of tea or conversation. He leaned against the doorframe, looking too comfortable. "Can we talk?" he asked, voice smooth. "You know, about continuing what we started." I froze. My stomach churned. "I thought it was just that one night," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. His smile didn't fade. "That was before I realized how much I enjoyed your company." He didn't threaten me, not directly, but his eyes carried a quiet menace. "I've been patient with you, Aanya. Most landlords wouldn't have waited this long. I think it's fair to expect a little consistency." There it was again, that word, fair. I shut the door without responding and locked it behind me. My heart pounded. The walls of my apartment suddenly felt smaller, tighter. I wasn't free. I was trapped in a debt I couldn't pay with money. After that day, he became persistent. Not aggressive, but present. Always present, watching, inviting, suggesting. I began to feel suffocated in my own home. I started applying for jobs more desperately, taking up any gig I could find, cleaning houses, dog walking, freelance typing, anything that paid. I stopped, answering his knocks. I started keeping the curtains closed. The apartment I once found solace in had become a prison, and my silence only tightened the chains. But quietly, carefully, I began saving. Every coin, every note. I tucked them into a jar under the floorboard. I didn't know when, but I knew one thing for certain. I had to leave. And I had to do it without him knowing. The days blurred into each other. I lived quietly, mechanically, like a shadow moving through rooms. Mr. Rakesh hadn't tried anything more direct, but his presence was constant, smiling from across the Courtyard, waving from his balcony, slipping notes under my door. The message was always the same, even if unspoken. I owed him. But I was done being owed. Every rupee I earned went into the jar. I denied myself every indulgence. No takeout, no ride shares, no internet. Just work, save, and wait for the right moment. I researched shelters, temporary hostels, anywhere that didn't ask for a year's worth of rent or look for references. All I needed was enough to get me out. Then came the storm. One night, heavy rain pounded the windows. The streets flooded and the power flickered out. In the dark silence of my apartment, I knew this was it. The perfect cover. He wouldn't expect me to leave in a storm. I packed my single suitcase, grabbed the jar, and tied my documents to my chest under layers of clothes. I left no note, no sign, just silence. The streets were muddy and the water reached my calves, but I didn't care. I walked until the building faded behind me, swallowed by mist and memory. I reached a shelter by dawn, soaked but invisible. They gave me a cot, a hot drink, and asked no questions. For the first time in months, I slept without fear. In the days that followed, I found small work through the shelter's network. A cleaning job at a school, cash payment, enough to get by. It wasn't freedom yet, but it was the start of something mine. Mr. Rakesh tried calling, texting, even sent a message to one of my old friends. I blocked every number. I erased every trace. I wasn't running because I was afraid. I was reclaiming what little I had left. Weeks later, I passed by my old neighborhood during an errand. From across the street, I saw him standing on his balcony, still watching the world like it belonged to him. He didn't see me, and I didn't want him to. I turned away and kept walking. I didn't owe him anything anymore, not even a goodbye. This wasn't a love story. It was a story about survival dressed as sacrifice, about how betrayal isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, wrapped in favors and polite smiles. Sometimes it looks like mercy. But I've learned something through it all. The worst kind of prison is the one built on silence and shame. And the greatest act of love is choosing yourself.